Alright, today we're going to take a brief look at Canada's history. Now, whenever the ice ages that covered North America thousands and thousands of years ago started to melt, people started to actually migrate into what is now Canada. Some of the first native people were the native Indians that lived in parts of the United States, and a group of people called the Inuit lived in Canada. Now, in areas that was too cold to farm, they resorted to hunting animals. And just like the native Indians that lived in the United States, the Inuit people were very resourceful, using every part of the animal for their daily lives. Because of these people, today there are over 400,000 Inuits and Indians living in Canada. Now, over the years, you had many more people coming to Canada, including the Vikings. They were the first Europeans to cross over. They settled in the area known as Newfoundland Island in about 1000 AD, but their settlements were not permanent. They were only here temporarily. In the 14 and then later 1500s, more Europeans started to come over, and they developed a large trading group with the native Indians. Now, the French were the first European people to permanently settle in Canada. Other people before that had only settled temporarily, but the French were first to have permanent settlements, and they called this area New France, much like the British called their territories in what would later become the U.S. New England, because I guess they didn't have any original names, but whatever. But the French and British competed for land quite often. Now, one of these encounters over land in the mid-1700s turned into a war called the French and Indian War. Now, the name is misleading because when you see that title, you think the French and native Indians fought each other, when in reality, the French and the Indians fought on the same side against the British. Because during this time, the native Indians were, of course, angry with the British because they were taking over their lands, and the French had befriended them and established a really good trade with them. So they fought alongside them, hoping that they could push the British out of the area. The way it ended up is that the British won, and they took control over New France. Although the British had control, the French residents there decided to stay. They didn't want to have to pick up and leave just because of new ownership. And their daily lives really didn't change. They were still able to farm, own businesses, go to church. So they still had all of their freedoms they previously had, but they were just under new leadership now. Kind of like in today's world, if a new manager takes over a restaurant, the workers still get to keep their jobs and everything still goes on as normal, they just have pretty much a new boss. So kind of the same thing. From this point, New France was divided up into provinces. And even today, Canada still has their divisions called provinces instead of states. Now, in 1867 is the first time the word Canada is going to come into existence, when the British Parliament called it the Dominion of Canada, got rid of the New France title, and Canada became self-governing, so they got to make their own laws and decisions. However, they weren't their own nation because they still had to answer to the British. Also around this time, in 1885, in Canada they built what was called the Transcontinental Railroad. It connected the east to the west. This railroad helped people trade goods. It helped carry supplies from one area from Canada to another, and also helped people explore Canada more easily. It wasn't until 1931 that Canada finally became fully independent. So they've only been a country for 89 years. They're still fairly young. Now today, Canada's culture is a very diverse place, much like the United States, because you had lots of immigration coming over during the time when they were building the Transcontinental Railroad, and you also had immigrants coming over after World War II looking for work and new places to live, especially from countries in Europe that were heavily damaged during the war. Now, Canada's government is very similar to ours. They have their 3 branches of government, just like we do. Instead of a president, they get to vote for someone called a prime minister, which essentially is a president, just kind of with a different job description, different title. Instead of Congress, where we make our laws, they have what's called Parliament, but they have 2 divisions, just like we do. And their national capital is Ottawa. Now, since Canada used to be a French territory, a lot of people there still speak French, But since the British had control for so long, a lot of them also speak English, and some are bilingual and speak both. So overall, Canada has its differences from us, but it's a very similar nation at the same time.